Last week, I got that message from my mom. Texted. Not even a call. Not even a damn call. It was about my brother Greg's retirement gala. This huge fancy event at a hotel downtown where he was being honored for 30 years of transformational leadership in the tech industry. The man basically stole ideas from everyone under him, climbed the ladder with other people's rungs, and now he was getting a six-figure book deal and a standing ovation. Classic. Meanwhile, I, his older sister, the one who helped him get his start, who introduced him to his first big investor, who stayed quiet when he borrowed half my tech blog articles for his keynote. Back in 2011, I was apparently just a name people had quietly erased. I hadn't seen Greg in almost a year. Not since the email incident. Let me rewind a second. A year ago, the warning sign. I ignored. A year ago, I found a leaked copy of Greg's memoir manuscript. Someone in publishing had sent it to me anonymously with a subject line that just said, "Thought you might want to see this before it prints." I clicked it open and skimmed through. By page 12, my jaw hit the floor. There it was. Paragraphs I had written verbatim from a 2015 op-ed I published under my name in TechSense. A quote from an interview I did with a startup founder. Even a story about our father twisted, edited, and rebranded as if it had happened to Greg. I remember calling him that night. Straight up said, "Greg, what the actual hell? You lifted my writing for your book." He gave me the fakest laugh. "Relax, Jord. You always said your voice was better suited behind the scenes. I'm just amplifying it." WTF does that even mean? I told him to either cut my work or credit it. He said he'd look into it. Never happened. I walked away. Didn't chase. Just quietly blocked his number and moved on. Or so I thought. This morning, the gala email. Fast forward to this morning, the day of the gala. I wasn't planning to go. Like at all. Until I checked my inbox and saw an email forwarded from an old mutual friend who works PR for the venue. Subject line, "Your name's still on the RSVP list." Body, "Hey, I know things are weird, but figured you should know you've got a place card. Table 19, see you tonight." Now listen, I wasn't about to dress up and play pretend, but I also wasn't about to let them act like I didn't exist. So I got in my car, stopped at Trader Joe's for a cheap bottle of champagne, for dramatic effect obviously, and drove straight to the hotel. No plan, just vibes and rage. The arrival and the insult. I walked in wearing a black pantsuit I hadn't touched in years. Minimal makeup, hair in a low bun, looked sharp but low-key. I didn't need glitter. I was the storm. Front desk had no clue who I was at first until a planner walked over with a clipboard and smiled. "Oh, Miss Lee, you're with the family? Your seat is this way." She started leading me out of the grand ballroom, past the chandeliers, past the tables labeled Board of Directors, Industry Legends, and Family. I stopped walking. "Where exactly are we going?" She paused and cleared her throat. There was a last-minute change. "You're at the outdoor overflow patio." Outdoor. Overflow, King patio. It was 43 degrees and drizzling. The only thing out there was a folding chair and a heater that barely worked. My name card was taped to the table with scotch tape. I laughed. Out loud. Just stood there and laughed like a crazy person. Because of course that's where they put me. Out of sight, out of memory. That was the whole goal, right? I wasn't a sister, I was a liability. The confrontation. Greg's golden glow. I went back inside, walked straight toward the velvet curtain behind the stage area where Greg was doing fake hugs with donors and kissing his wife Candace on the cheek like he hadn't spent the last 6 months sleeping in his office. He saw me and froze. Half smile still stuck on his face like he couldn't unglitch. "Jordan, wow. You came." "Yeah, thought I'd pop in." Patio seating was beautiful. Real luxury vibes. Candace turned holding a champagne flute. That woman had Botox in her damn eyelids. "Oh, we thought you wouldn't be interested with your schedule and all." B*TJ, my schedule is freelancing and rage. I didn't respond to her. Just looked Greg dead in the eye and said, "Did you seriously sign off on that seating arrangement?" He didn't answer. Just sipped his drink and looked away. That's when I knew. They did it on purpose. They didn't want me there. But they also didn't want me loud about it. They wanted me silent, cold, and sitting next to the kicking ferns while they toasted each other inside. Nah, screw that. They forgot I was a writer. And writers don't forget. Last year when Greg published his fake memoir and I confronted him, I told myself I was done, that I'd walk away. Let him rot in his own ego. But tonight, something shifted. It wasn't just the taped name card or the folding chair under a dripping heat lamp. It was the smug look Candace gave me, the half-laugh Greg swallowed when he saw me. Like I was a joke they assumed wouldn't show. Like they'd already erased me from the story. They wrote me out. So I picked up the pen. I didn't make a scene right away. I know how these events go. There's a flow, a build, the cocktails, the mingling, the speeches, and the climax, the part where people say things they can't take back. So I waited. I wandered the ballroom sipping cheap champagne and collecting intel like a gossip spy. I said hi to some familiar faces, old mentors, Greg's ex-colleagues who were half drunk already. People remembered me. One of them whispered, "Didn't know you two were talking again. You're the one who wrote that AI ethics piece, right? Loved it." I smiled. Yeah, he loved it too, quoted it word for word in his last chapter. The guy blinked. Wait, he did? Oh yeah, he did. And that was only the start. Candace gave a speech first. Typical corporate wife stuff. My amazing husband, his passion sacrifices for innovation. She teared up when she mentioned how he'd built his empire from scratch. Scratch. Bitch, he built it from my blog posts. I kept smiling. Then came the CEO of his former company. Then his publisher. All the same story, visionary pioneer industry titan. It was a TED Talk of bulls **T. And then the host took the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, as we celebrate Greg Lee's legacy, tonight we're opening the floor for a few words from close friends and family. My cue. I walked up before anyone else could move. Took the mic straight from his assistant's hand. Didn't ask, didn't wait. People clapped politely, some recognizing me, most just being polite. I didn't care. I looked out at the sea of donors, fake friends, industry leeches, and legacy vultures, and smiled like I'd been invited to kill the vibe. Hi everyone, I'm Jordan, Greg's older sister. Yeah, the one from the footnote in chapter 3. A couple chuckles, a few confused stares. I wasn't sure I'd be speaking tonight, mostly because no one actually asked me to. But since I'm seated next to the patio heaters and someone's emotional support schnauzer, I figured what the hell. Louder laughs this time, nervous ones. Greg and we've had a complicated history. You know, normal sibling stuff, like when you share childhood memories, or your hard-earned work, or full paragraphs of published writing, and then someone else gets paid 6 figures to call it original insight. Dead silence? I let it breathe. You all know Greg is a visionary. The big ideas, the quotes, the legacy. But here's something you might not know. He wasn't always the loudest in the room. He used to listen. Back when it was just me and him in Mom's basement, hacking together websites for local diners and arguing over font choices. Some older guests nodded, they remembered those days. I wrote, I designed, he pitched, we were a team. But over time, though we faded. Somewhere between funding rounds and PR agencies, my name got dropped. On purpose. Greg shifted in his seat. Candace looked like she wanted to hurl her mimosa. Last year, I asked Greg to credit one of my pieces. Just one. You know what he said? Your voice works better behind the scenes. I turned to him directly. Greg, tonight's all about you. But for once, I wanted my voice in the ******ing room. Gasps. A woman up front literally choked on her wine. And hey, maybe you don't owe me anything. Maybe that's just how this game works. The louder one wins. The shinier one gets the credit. The quiet one gets to write blog posts that disappear into the void. But just so we're clear, I pulled a folded sheet of paper from my pocket, my original op-ed, date stamped, signed, printed. This came first. I held it up like a damn exhibit in court. So when you raise your glass tonight to celebrate Greg's brilliance, just know some of that shine came from someone who was told to sit outside. Silence. You could hear someone's fork hit a plate. I handed the mic back, walked straight off stage. The aftermath was cinematic. Greg didn't stand. He sat frozen, jaw-clenched hand gripping his wine glass like it might give him a better answer than I did. Candace hissed something at him. He whispered something back. Whatever it was, her smile dropped so fast it almost echoed. She stood and left the table. Just walked right out of the ballroom. The host tried to pivot. Well, let's thank Jordan for those heartfelt remarks. Now back to, but it was too late. Whispers were already rippling through the crowd. Someone Googled my name. Someone else pulled up the op-ed. People started reading fast. I walked past a group of guests whispering, "Did you know about that article? Holy as ****T, she wasn't kidding. Is that plagiarism? I didn't look back. Outside it was still cold. My table was still empty. The patio heater still barely worked. But for the first time that night, I felt warm. Back in my car, I sat for a second with the engine off. My phone buzzed. Mom, what did you just do? He's humiliated. Greg, you're a F***ing disaster. Never talk to me again. Candace, thank you. That one made me blink. Candace again, I knew he wasn't being honest. I just didn't have proof. Until now. Damn. I leaned back against the headrest and laughed. Really laughed. It wasn't the revenge I had planned. Hell, I hadn't planned anything. But it worked. And the best part, I didn't even raise my voice. Just told the truth. I got home around midnight still half buzzing from the chaos I'd left behind. I didn't turn on music, didn't need noise. The silence felt earned. It felt like my space again. I poured a glass of that Trader Joe's champagne, the same bottle I brought as a joke, and sat on my floor like some triumphant raccoon queen surrounded by crumbs of familial implosions. I didn't even take my shoes off. I just sat there and scrolled. And oh boy, they were talking. Twitter. Greg Lee's sister just exposed him for lifting her articles in front of 300 people, and it was glorious. This speech is going to be the next I quit meme. Can someone find the op-ed she held up? I need that level of petty in my life. Reddit had a thread too. Of course it did. Someone posted under RR Tech Drama. CEO Greg Lee plagiarized his sister's work for memoir, got exposed at his own gala. They'd clipped my entire speech from someone's phone recording and uploaded it. I had no idea who filmed it, but they were heroes. It was grainy, shaky, and absolutely brutal. You could hear someone in the background whispering, "No, she didn't." I watched the whole thing back once, then again, and again. Not because I was obsessed with my own moment, but because I couldn't believe I actually said it. I had actually done it. And that's when the texts started rolling in. Real ones. From real people. Lena, one of Greg's old interns. Jordan, I worked under Greg in 2017. I remember seeing drafts of presentations with your bylines blacked out. Thought it was a mistake. I'm so sorry. Mara, our old childhood neighbor. I always wondered why he got all the credit. You were the one people came to for help. Uncle Pete? Yes, Uncle freaking Pete. Proud of you. Should have said something years ago myself. That one hit harder than I expected. Because here's the thing, when you grow up in someone else's shadow, you get used to playing small. You laugh it off. You let it go. And eventually, you just shrink to fit the room they've decided you belong in. For me, that room was usually outside it. The next day, I didn't open any emails until afternoon. The first was from Greg's publisher. Dear Miss Lee, following recent developments and newly surfaced materials, we are placing the release of Mr. Gregory Lee's memoir on hold, pending a full review. Should you wish to provide your side of the authorship claims, we welcome your input. I spit my coffee. I mean, I knew it was serious, but I didn't think the publisher would actually pause his book. That was a 6-figure advance and a full PR tour now circling the drain because I pulled a folded sheet of printer paper out of my pocket. One piece of truth. That's all it took. Second email from a journalist. Someone I used to intern with years ago. Hey, Jordan saw the video. If you're ready to talk, I'd love to run a feature on you. You deserve some spotlight, let me know. Spotlight. Huh. That word used to make me uncomfortable. Still kinda does. But this time it didn't sound like a spotlight to burn under. It sounded like daylight. By late afternoon, Mom called. I didn't answer. She called again, left a voicemail this time. Her voice was tight, not angry, just tired. Jordan, I don't know what to say. Your brother's a wreck. Your father's embarrassed. The whole family's calling me asking what happened. I know things weren't perfect between you two, but did you really have to do it like that? Couldn't we have handled this privately? Privately. Handled what privately? My years of being erased. My writing being recycled like disposable content. The seat next to the F***, in coat rack. I didn't respond. Instead, I wrote. I opened a blank doc, titled it, When You're the Footnote in Someone Else's Memoir, and I wrote until my fingers hurt. 2 days later, the fallout grew legs. Greg went on radio silence. His assistant quit. His LinkedIn profile went from author, vertical bar speaker, vertical bar innovator to just tech veteran. Candace filed for a temporary separation. That leaked too. Some cousin of hers posted it on Facebook like it was a soft launch of a divorce. And me. I posted my own story. I didn't name him directly, but the details were there. My words, my voice, my receipts. The post went viral. Not just for the drama, but for the truth of it. People shared their own stories. My brother took credit for a company I helped build. My ex published my poems as his lyrics. My boss used my pitch deck and fired me before the launch. I wasn't alone. And maybe that's the real twist here. Not the revenge, not the public mess, but the fact that when I finally stopped swallowing it, when I spit it out, other people said, same. A week later, my dad called. Not to yell, not to scold. Just this, I didn't know, Yord. I'm sorry. He said he'd watched the video 5 times. Said he kept rewinding the part where I pulled out the printed article. Your hands were shaking, he said. They were. But my voice didn't. He told me he'd spoken to Greg, that he hadn't seen him this humbled before, that maybe in a weird way he needed it. I don't know if I cared. This wasn't about teaching Greg a lesson. It was about reminding myself I still had a name, a voice, a legacy of my own, and I wasn't going to let anyone slap a dust jacket over it and pretend I was never part of the story. Here's the wildest part. I got offered a book deal. I'm not even kidding. Same publisher, different editor. We want your story, they said, your version. I said I'd think about it, and I am. Because for the first time, I'm not writing out of spite. I'm writing to be seen, to be remembered on my own terms. No mic drop, no speech, no more folding chairs in the cold. Just my voice. And this time it's loud enough. It's weird what happens after the storm. Everyone thinks revenge is this big satisfying fireworks show that you burn the bridge, throw up your middle fingers and ride off into some glowing sunset. But what they don't tell you is how quiet it gets afterward, how heavy it can feel to finally say what you've been swallowing for years. How being right doesn't always feel like winning. 3 days after the book deal offer, I stood in my kitchen staring at the email and couldn't decide whether to cry, scream, or just delete it. I had dreamed about this once. Years ago, back when I was still writing long-form essays in cafes and pitching tiny columns to websites that paid in exposure and great portfolio boosters. But this wasn't that version. This wasn't my book being born from joy or momentum. This was a reclamation, a response, a fix, and part of me hated that. Because for years I told myself I didn't want the spotlight, that I wasn't interested in ego and platforms and branding. But maybe I only said that because I thought no one was ever going to hand it to me. Now that it was here, it felt contaminated. That afternoon, I went to the park with my friend Maya. She's the one person who's known both me and Greg since we were in middle school, back when he still had braces and I had confidence. We sat on a bench with iced coffees and watched some golden retriever try to chase its own leash for 10 minutes straight. It was perfect background noise for emotional unpacking. You're allowed to want it, Maya said, stirring her drink. The book deal, the credit, all of it. I didn't respond, just kept watching the dog lose the fight to its own tail. It doesn't make you greedy, it makes you human. You told the truth. Now people want to hear more of it. That's not shady, that's overdue. I looked at her. But what if people think I'm just trying to cash in on drama? She snorted. People watch 9-hour YouTube breakdowns of TikTok apologies. Let them think what they want. Your story is real. Your voice matters. You didn't cause the mess, you just stopped cleaning it up. That line sat in my chest for the rest of the day like a rock wrapped in velvet. That night I went through my old files. I'm talking deep old Word docs from 2011 half-finished essays titled things like Sibling Erasure Syndrome and Why I Don't Sit at the Grown-Up Table. There were journal entries, scraps of blog posts that never made it online. Even an audio file I'd recorded once when I was crying in the parking lot of my mom's church because Greg had just won another local business award and I wasn't invited. I listened to it again. They always say he's the one who made it, but they don't see who kept him standing. My voice cracked. You could hear my breath catch. It was raw, angry, tired. And I realized that woman in the audio, she deserved to be heard too. Not because it would fix everything. Not because she wanted applause. But because silence had never protected her anyway. A few days later, I told the publisher I was in. They sent over a draft contract. It felt surreal watching my name in bold letters at the top of a deal memo. Jordan Lee, not Greg's sister, not background voice, not ghost contributor. Just me. I called my lawyer friend to look it over. I wasn't going to get played again. This is actually solid, she said. You have full control. You write what you want. Nobody touches it without your say. I exhaled. Then I opened a blank doc and wrote the first line. They saved a seat for me outside by the trash can like I was an afterthought, so I decided to become unforgettable. Meanwhile, the internet continued doing what the internet does, chewing up stories and spinning them out like laundry on speed cycle. Someone found Greg's old podcast interviews and started pointing out repeated lines from other people's essays. I didn't even know about those, but Reddit did. They made a compilation. It was brutal. Then came the apology post. Of course, a LinkedIn essay titled, "When You Let Ego Replace Gratitude," complete with a black and white profile photo and a caption that read, "Reflections from a Humbled Man." I didn't even have to read it to know what was inside. Buzzwords, passive voice, maybe a few vague I fell short lines, probably some kind of weird metaphor about stepping on the shoulders of giants and forgetting who helped him stand. But I read it anyway. And yeah, all of that, plus this gem. To those whose voices I've spoken over, I hope to listen better moving forward. No direct mention of me, not a single name. Just vague vibes and regret-colored fog. It was PR-grade remorse, meant to soothe shareholders, not siblings. I rolled my eyes so hard I saw my own brain. Then out of nowhere, Candace emailed me. Subject line, "I owe you." Okay, I wasn't expecting that. I opened it. I've spent years defending him to people who saw what I chose not to. Maybe because I didn't want to believe it. Maybe because it was easier to pretend the image was real. But the night of the gala when I watched you speak, I saw it for what it was. I know it's not my place to ask for anything, but if you ever want to talk sister to sister-in-law or just woman to woman, I'm here. I didn't know what to say. Still don't. But I bookmarked it. That's progress, right? 1 week later, my mom finally showed up, unannounced. I was in sweats working on chapter 3 and she knocked like it was a normal Tuesday. Like we hadn't gone 3 voicemails deep into passive-aggressive silence. I opened the door. "Hey," she said, "can I come in?" I stepped aside. She sat down on the edge of my couch like someone unsure if they were still welcome in a house they helped decorate but never really lived in. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, "about you, about Greg, about how I let some things slide." I waited. I think I believed him more because he made life easier for me. I could show him off. He made me look good. But you always challenged us. You asked hard questions. You didn't follow the script. I bit the inside of my cheek. I didn't want complicated. I wanted proud. And I'm sorry, Jordan. I'm really, really sorry for not choosing you even when you needed me to. It wasn't a movie moment. There were no tears, no swelling soundtrack. But it was something. And I let her stay for coffee. That night, I added another line to the manuscript. Forgiveness isn't a clean slate. It's just letting the ink dry so you can write the next page without smudging the last. The story wasn't done yet, but this time, it was mine. There's a weird calm that comes after you sign a book contract. Like I expected this rush some montage of me in coffee shops with messy hair typing like a girl possessed while dramatic music played and fans waited breathlessly. Spoiler, that's not what happened. What really happened was I got stuck, completely frozen. I stared at that blank Google Doc for days. I tried writing about Greg, about our childhood, about the quiet rage I'd swallowed every Thanksgiving while he got toasted like he'd built Rome with one hand and coded a Fortune 500 company with the other. But every time I started, I felt like I was dragging myself back to a place I'd just escaped from, and it pissed me off. Because this was supposed to be my win, my turn. And here I was, paralyzed by the very thing I thought I'd buried, the fear that my words didn't matter unless someone else said them first. I texted Maya. "I think I've forgotten how to write." She replied within 30 seconds. "Nah, you're just trying to write something perfect before you let it be honest. Start ugly. Clean later." God, I hate how right she always is. So I opened a fresh doc. No title, no pressure, just vibes. And I typed, "The first lie I ever told myself was that if I stayed quiet, they'd love me more." It wasn't brilliant, but it was honest. And once that sentence existed, the next one came easier. Then the one after that. Until I looked up and realized I'd written 3 pages without blinking. Over the next few weeks, I fell into a rhythm. Morning coffee, writing until lunch, walks in the late afternoon, rereading old entries, reliving moments I hadn't allowed myself to process. I wrote about how Greg would take credit for our joint school projects and say, "It just sounds better coming from me." I wrote about how our mom told me I was too emotional whenever I cried during arguments, but praised Greg's leadership energy when he yelled. I wrote about the birthday I spent alone at a Denny's because no one remembered. And I wrote about the rage that slowly fermented into something quieter, colder, a numbness I didn't even notice until it cracked during that speech at the gala. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was archaeology. I was digging up the bones of my silence. Mid-month, my editor called. "Hey, just wanted to check in. The pages you've submitted so far absolutely gripping." I blinked. "Wait, you've read them already?" "Twice. We think this could be big. Like big. Do you want to include an excerpt in the Times preview next month?" I nearly dropped my phone. This was happening. Like really happening. And then, of course, Greg reached out, because of course he did. He texted first. "Greg, so this is how it's gonna be. You burn everything down and then write a memoir about it. No greeting, no apology, just ego." I didn't answer. An hour later, "Just remember you're not the only one with a story." "Oh, that's cute. A threat, a guilt trip, a bad tweet, draft." I almost replied with something snarky, something nuclear, but I didn't. Because honestly, I didn't care what Greg's story was. I knew mine now, and I knew it didn't require his permission. The week after that, I got a message from a woman named Angela. She worked at a nonprofit for young women in tech and had seen the video from the gala. "Would you be willing to speak at our mentorship summit in March? Your story hit a nerve. We've had so many girls come forward about being passed over, silenced, or minimized. You put words to something most of them haven't even been able to explain." I sat there staring at that message for like 10 minutes. Me, the same girl who used to hide her articles behind fake usernames. The one who avoided eye contact at networking events because she thought her ideas only mattered in someone else's mouth. "They wanted me to speak," I replied. "Yes, I'd be honored." And I meant it. A few days later, I met with Candace. Yeah, that Candace. It felt like defusing a bomb at first, but she picked a chill cafe, wore a hoodie instead of her usual designer armor, and ordered chamomile tea like someone preparing for war with their cortisol. We sat in awkward silence for the first few minutes. I was expecting some kind of weird apology or explanation, maybe even a defense of Greg. But she surprised me. "You know what pisses me off the most?" she said. I shrugged. "That I didn't see it. I mean, I saw it, but I didn't look. I ignored every red flag, every quiet moment where I knew he was taking credit for other people's work. For mine, for yours, for everyone." She stirred her tea aggressively. "He made me believe that being attached to him made me important. Turns out I was just convenient." I didn't say anything. "I'm divorcing him." That made me look up. "Wait, for real?" She nodded. "Lawyered up last week. NDA be damned. I'm done." She paused. "And I just wanted to say thank you, not just for blowing it all up, but for showing me that you can walk away and still be okay." I wasn't okay, not fully, but I was getting there. And that felt enough. Later that week, Mom came by again. This time with old photo albums. "I thought maybe you'd want these," she said, placing them on the kitchen table like relics from a better life. We went through them together. There were birthdays where I stood in the background blurred, vacations where Greg was always centered, report cards with stickers on his and mine folded behind them. "I didn't realize how much I left out," she whispered. Neither did I, until I saw it all in print. "You didn't have to be perfect to deserve attention, Jordan. I'm sorry I made you feel like you did." We cried, quietly, the way women do when they're trying to hold it together but can't anymore. And for once, I didn't try to minimize it. That night, I wrote the closing of Chapter 9. Some people get written into history without earning it. Others live full lives in the margins. But every once in a while, the footnote picks up the pen. I exhaled when I typed that line, because that was the moment I realized something important. This story, this book, it wasn't about Greg anymore. It was about all the people who've been edited out of their own lives. It was for every girl told to be nice, every sister called difficult, every woman told her work was only valuable when someone else presented it better. It was for me. And I was finally done asking for permission to exist in the main chapter. The book came out 2 months ago. No launch party, no red carpet, no dramatic podcast tour. Just me, a hard copy in my lap, and a silence that felt like mine. For once, not something I was punished with, but something I chose. It dropped on a Tuesday. Quietly, subtly, like a letter slipped under the door of a house that forgot I lived there. And then, the messages started. Instagram DMs from women I've never met. I cried reading Chapter 4. It was like watching my own sister's wedding on repeat. That part about sitting outside at the gala been there. Except it was my dad's funeral. "You made me feel seen, thank you." And it hit me this wasn't just my story. It was everybody's. Everybody who ever sat outside the frame. Everyone who clapped from the hallway while someone else took the bow. This book, it cracked something open. The reviews trickled in. Small blogs, independent reviewers, a few big names. Some called it brave. Others called it raw and devastating in the best way. One line stuck with me. A story about reclaiming space in a family that always left the door unlocked but never invited you in. Nailed it. It wasn't bitter, it was accurate. Greg hasn't spoken to me since the book dropped. He tried to threaten legal action at first, a vague email from a junior lawyer full of phrases like potential defamation and public brand damage. I didn't respond. Because the thing is, when you write the truth, you don't flinch when it's read out loud. My publisher stood behind me. The legal team reviewed every chapter, every quote, every documented proof. They even double-checked timestamps and social media receipts. It wasn't a memoir fueled by vengeance. It was a record. Greg couldn't sue the past. So he went silent. I saw him once, at a grocery store. 3 weeks after the book came out. He was by the frozen meals staring at a lasagna like it owed him money. He looked smaller. Not physically, just dimmer. Like the light he'd always fed on wasn't hitting him the same way anymore. He didn't see me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to be seen. I just walked past. Candace reached out again. She told me she moved back to Michigan, bought a little place near her sister, started teaching yoga classes. Turns out, when you stop orbiting someone else, you finally figure out what gravity feels like. God, that hit. She sent me a photo of a daisy tattoo on her wrist. A reminder I get to bloom even if I was planted in the wrong garden. Respect. My mom comes over more now. She brings baked goods as if carbs can mend years of erasure. But honestly, sometimes they do. We don't talk about Greg much. Not because we're avoiding it, but because we don't have to. She asks about my writing. She brags about me to her church friends now. It's weird, sweet, and a little late, but it counts. Healing doesn't always come wrapped in a perfect apology. Sometimes it just shows up with banana bread and keeps showing up. I spoke at that mentorship summit in March. Stood on a little stage with a mic that shook in my hand and a room full of young women who looked at me like I was someone worth listening to. I told them the truth. Told them about sitting in the hallway at a family event and realizing I was no longer waiting to be invited in, I was walking out for good. Told them that silence doesn't make you wise. It just makes you easy to forget. Told them that even when you think you've missed your chance, it's still okay to speak. At the end, a girl came up to me, barely 19. Pink hair, oversized hoodie, and eyes that had seen too much too young. She hugged me and said, "I didn't even know I was allowed to take up space until you talked." And I swear, that one sentence made every sleepless night worth it. The last chapter of the book wasn't the ending. It was a door. I'm working on something new now. Not a memoir, not a takedown. Just stories. About complicated women. About sisters and silence. About rage that simmers instead of screams. About quiet power and the cost of reclaiming it. I've had 3 more speaking invites. 1 podcast appearance. A workshop for women in media. And I still write from my kitchen table in sweatpants because who the hell needs a corner office when you've built a whole story from scratch? Sometimes I still hear echoes. Mom saying don't make a scene. Greg calling me too sensitive. Candace's fake smile. My dad's silence. But they're quieter now. Less like wounds, more like scars still there but no longer open. Just reminders. Of where I've been. Of why I wrote. Of who I am now. This morning I went back to that gala venue. I didn't plan to. I was walking past it on my way to meet Maya for brunch, and something made me stop. Same building, same lobby, same ridiculous chandeliers. And then I saw it the hallway where my seat had been. That ugly little table near the coats, that stupid heater. Empty now. And I stood there for a second just breathing. No rage, no pain, just clarity. They gave me a seat in the hallway, and I used it to build a stage. They erased my name, and I signed it on a book cover. They kept me quiet, and I found a microphone. Not out of spite, out of truth. So yeah, that's my story. Not the version Greg would have told. Not the one that makes people comfortable, but the real one. And I didn't write it to be loved. I wrote it so no one else would feel invisible in their own damn life. If that's revenge, cool. But to me, that's freedom. Story 2. My name's Marcus, I'm 51 now. And up until last spring, I truly believed I had raised a daughter. Not by blood, not through a court order, just through love. I met Dana when she was 29. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Tessa and a mountain of baggage from her last relationship. Tessa was this quirky, gap-toothed lightning bolt of energy who once asked me completely serious if the moon had a bedtime. And somehow over time they became my family. Dana was honest from the start. Tessa's biological father, Travis, was unreliable at best and reckless at worst. In and out of jobs, relationships, even jail once for a DUI. He'd pop into Tessa's life with cheap gifts and fake smiles, then vanish for months when things got inconvenient. Meanwhile, I stuck around. I helped her with homework, fixed her bike tires, took her to her first school dance. I even learned how to braid her hair badly, but she was kind enough to pretend it looked great. By the time she was in high school, she'd started calling me Dad. No one forced it. It just happened. And when she whispered it the first time, half shy, half testing me, I almost cried. Because I knew she meant it. Fast forward 15 years. I walked her through college applications. I co-signed her lease for an off-campus apartment. I showed up with truckloads of groceries when she was too broke to afford ramen. I even helped her build her first resume. Tessa didn't have much contact with Travis during that time. A call every few birthdays, a rare drop-in around holidays, always empty promises and surface-level affection. But I never tried to replace him. I just filled in the spaces he left. When she graduated, she sprinted off the stage into my arms. "Thank you, Dad," she said, tears running down her face. "I couldn't have done it without you." And in that moment, I thought, this is it. I made it. I'm her father, not just in name, in every way that counts. So when she got engaged the following year, I was genuinely thrilled. Andrew was kind, responsible, respectful, a solid guy. They'd been together almost 5 years, and I'd watched them grow from awkward college kids into something real. Tessa asked if I could help plan. Of course I said yes. I paid for part of the venue, deposit helped review catering contracts, even footed the bill for her custom dress after the first one didn't work out. It was expensive, sure, but I didn't mind. This was her big day. Our day. Or so I thought. The wedding invite arrived a month before the ceremony. I smiled when I saw the gold script on the envelope. Tessa and Andrew, it said. Elegant, simple. But when I opened it, no special mention. No with love from the bride's father, Marcus. No seat of honor, just a standard guest slot. Table 9. And then came the punch to the gut. The man walking her down the aisle. Travis. I asked her about it over dinner that same week. Calmly, gently. "I noticed Travis is listed as the one giving you away," I said, trying to hide the shake in my voice. She didn't even look up from her salad. "Yeah, I just always imagined he'd be the one." I blinked. "Tess, I thought—" she interrupted, "He is my biological father." She said it like it was a fact. Like that word biological erased everything I had ever done. Like biology outranked love, consistency, and sacrifice. It wasn't even the choice that broke me. It was the casualness. The way she said it, like it hadn't even crossed her mind to ask me. I went to the wedding anyway. I don't know why. Maybe I still hoped she'd change her mind. Maybe I just couldn't believe it until I saw it with my own eyes. I sat in the back, a few rows behind the main family section. I watched as Travis strutted down the aisle with her arm tucked in his. He looked smug, like a man playing a role he hadn't earned. Everyone clapped. And me, I clapped too. But my heart was nowhere in that applause. At the reception, they toasted her amazing dad, Travis, and thanked him for always being there. I felt invisible. No one mentioned me, not once. 20 years of showing up erased in a single afternoon. The week after the wedding, Tessa called. Her voice was light, bubbly, like nothing had happened. She talked about the honeymoon, the sunset dinners, how Andrew surprised her with a couple's massage. And then she asked for money. Apparently they'd overspent on the trip and had some bills coming up. Could I help cover the difference? I stayed quiet for a second too long. Dad, she asked. I took a breath. No, Tessa, I can't. Silence. What, you always help? You've never said no. Well, I said calmly, maybe you should ask your real father this time. Another pause. Oh, she said, I understand. And just like that, she hung up. Dana was livid. You're punishing her for one decision, she snapped later that night. No, I said, I'm honoring mine. We didn't speak much after that. A chill settled into the house, quiet but thick, like a draft you can't find the source of. I realized something sitting alone on the porch a few nights later. I had spent years giving without expecting anything in return, except maybe acknowledgement. And even that was too much to ask. After that phone call with Tessa, I stared at my phone for a long time. It didn't ring, No follow-up message, no second try. And I didn't call her back. For the first time in 20 years, I let the silence speak for me. Dana didn't. She tried at first to keep things normal. Said things like, "You know how emotional weddings are," or "She didn't mean to hurt you." But she did. She meant every part of it. The invite, the aisle, the speech that never came. I wasn't collateral damage. I was dismissed. And Dana? She just wanted everything to go back to how it was. But I wasn't the same man anymore. 2 weeks later, she came home from lunch with Tessa and dropped a line that made my blood pressure spike. "They might need some help with rent next month." I didn't even look up from my book. "Then they should talk to Travis." Silence. "They asked you already, didn't they?" I added. Dana bit her lip. She mentioned it. Of course she did. Still calling me dad when the bank account was low. I set the book down. "Let me ask you something. When she was picking who'd walk her down the aisle, did she even consider me? Or did she decide months ago?" Dana didn't answer. Which was the answer? I started going for longer walks in the evening. I said it was for my knees, but really it was just to breathe. I couldn't stand the wait in that house, the way Dana avoided eye contact, the way she brought up Tessa with that careful, loaded tone. Like she was testing whether I'd explode or stay quiet. Spoiler, I stayed quiet. Too quiet, maybe. We were becoming strangers. Sharing space, not life. The bed felt colder at night. Our dinners shorter, conversations clipped. I wanted to fix it. But I didn't know how to fix a foundation that had been cracked for years. One I hadn't even realized was breaking until the wedding split it wide open. 3 weeks later, I got a message. Not from Tessa, from Andrew. "Hey Marcus, can we talk? It's important." It was polite, direct, but something about it felt off. I waited a full day before replying. "Sure, call me tomorrow evening." He did. And what do you know? It was about money. "We've fallen behind," he said. "Things have been rough. I lost my job last month and the bills just keep piling up." I listened, said nothing. Then he added, "Tessa thought maybe you could help, just until we get back on our feet." I couldn't help myself. I laughed. It wasn't cruel, just stunned disbelief. He went quiet. "I'm sorry," I said eventually, "but I can't help you." "Marcus." "No," I cut in. "I think it's time Travis stepped up." "But he's not really in the picture," Andrew said, his voice tinged with frustration. "Exactly," I replied. Yet somehow he got the father of the bride moment. So now he gets the rest of the role too. I hung up before he could respond. Dana didn't say anything that night. But she knew. She always knew. The next morning she slammed the cabinet a little harder than necessary. Didn't make eye contact. Didn't kiss my cheek like she used to. I didn't chase her. I was done chasing people who didn't want to see me. A month passed, then another. Tessa didn't call. Andrew didn't follow up. Dana grew colder. One night I came home late after grabbing dinner alone. She was already in bed, lights off, but I could tell she was awake. I stood there for a second, then said quietly, "I miss you." She didn't answer. A few days later, Dana told me something that landed like a sucker punch. Tessa and Andrew got evicted. I raised an eyebrow. What happened to Travis? He didn't return her messages, she said, almost in a whisper. Said he'd help, but never sent anything. Shocking, I muttered. Then added, "So now what?" "They're living with Andrew's mom." I nodded. "Hope that works out for them." She looked at me like I'd just kicked a puppy. "You don't even care." I stood up slowly. I did, for 20 years, and when it counted, I didn't even exist. Dana opened her mouth to respond, but closed it again. There was nothing left to say. I started sleeping on the couch, not because she asked me to, but because the bed felt like a museum full of things we used to be, memories gathering dust. At work I was fine, focused, quiet, at peace even. At home I was a ghost. I picked up old hobbies again, woodworking, restoring antique radios, sketching. Things I hadn't touched in years because life was too busy fixing everyone else's mess. Now I had time. Now I chose silence over sacrifice. Then out of nowhere Tessa texted. "No hello, no how are you, just, I know I hurt you. Can we meet?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then typed, "Where and when?" We met at the park. The same park where I first saw her holding Dana's hand, chasing a paper airplane across the grass. She was already sitting when I arrived. No wedding ring, face thinner, eyes tired. We made small talk, weather, work, nothing important. Then she said it. "Dad." I flinched just slightly. "I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling. I didn't think. I wanted this perfect day, and I thought having Travis walk me down the aisle would make it feel whole, like I had both my parents. You do, I said quietly, but only one showed up when it counted. She nodded. I see that now. I waited. But I didn't cry, I didn't forgive. Not yet. I hope one day, she added, you'll let me make it up to you. I stood slowly. Maybe, I said, but not today. She didn't stop me as I walked away. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if she ever would. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than shouting. For the past 6 months, Dana and I have lived in the same house, but not the same world. We cook in silence, eat in silence, sleep in different rooms with the door always halfway closed, like we both want to leave an opening but don't know how to walk through it. I kept hoping things would thaw, but sometimes cold becomes the new normal. Tessa didn't call again after that meeting. She sent a text on my birthday. Just hope you're well. I miss you. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because I didn't know how to say I miss who you used to be. And maybe she felt the same about me. Dana's been different too. Colder, shorter, always looking at me like I'm supposed to fix a broken pipe I didn't crack. She blames me, though she doesn't say it outright. It's in the way she sighs when I turn off the news too early, or how she stares at her phone a little longer after a call from Tessa, like I'm the wall between them, not the decision Tessa made. One night after another dinner filled with fork clinks and silence, she finally said it. You really don't feel guilty at all. I set my fork down. About what? About letting her struggle. About walking away. I didn't walk away, I said calmly. I just stopped walking toward someone who never once looked back. She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. But I wasn't angry. Just done. I kept waiting for the moment where we'd both sit down and talk like we used to really talk. But that moment never came. Instead, Dana started spending more time outside the house. Late lunch dates, errands that took hours, calls in the backyard that cut off when I stepped outside. And me, I stayed in the garage. Sawdust in the air, music low, hands busy. I rebuilt a coffee table we'd always said we'd replace, fixed the old dresser in the guest room, organized the toolbox. Because sometimes when the people you love won't let you fix what's broken, you find something else that will let you. Then Sophie called. Dana's oldest friend. They met in college. She was the fun one. Always brought wine and stories. Always had a sarcastic comment about everything. She called out of nowhere and said, "You sound like hell." I laughed. "Thanks. No, seriously, what's going on?" I hesitated, then told her everything. She listened. Really listened. No advice. No, but she's your daughter. Just quiet understanding. After that, she started checking in more. A message here. A phone call there. And one day she asked to drop off a book I mentioned. She came in, we had coffee, talked, laughed a little. Then she put her hand on mine just briefly and said, "You didn't deserve this." That's all. But it echoed for days. Dana noticed. Of course she did. The late night messages, the calls I took in the backyard, the small unspoken shift in the way I carried myself, a little lighter, a little less resigned. She didn't confront me, not directly. But one night she asked, "Do you still love me?" I froze. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I had too many. "I don't know," I said finally. "I think I miss what we used to be more than I love what we are now." She didn't reply, just went to bed, alone. The next day, Tessa showed up at the house. Unannounced, she looked thinner, tired, like the weight of every mistake had finally landed. "I just wanted to talk," she said. I let her in. We sat in the same living room where she used to watch cartoons sprawled across the floor with crayons and cereal. She stayed standing. "I know I messed up," she said, "and I know it's late, but I'm really trying to be better." I waited. "I found a part-time job," she continued. "We're looking for a new apartment. Andrew's trying too." "I'm glad," I said. "I miss you," she added. "And I hate that I ruined everything." I stood up slowly. "You didn't ruin everything, Tess. You just reminded me that I wasn't part of it." Her face fell. "I don't know how to fix it," she whispered. "You can't," I said gently, "but you can stop expecting me to fix what you broke." She nodded. No tears, no anger. Just quiet acceptance. Then she left. Later that night, Dana asked what she'd said. I told her. "She's trying," she said, like it was a defense. "So did I replied. "For 20 years. Another silence. Then Dana looked me dead in the eyes and asked, "Is there someone else?" I didn't lie. Yes. She didn't cry, didn't yell. Just stood up, walked into the bedroom and shut the door. That was the loudest sound I'd heard in months. The next morning she left before sunrise. No note. Just an empty mug and a missing set of keys. She stayed at her sister's for a few days. We didn't speak. And during that silence, something shifted. I didn't feel panic. I felt peace. For the first time in years, I felt the absence of obligation. Sophie didn't replace Dana. She didn't try. She just listened. Reminded me I was more than what I gave to everyone else. We didn't rush into anything. No declarations, no promises. Just presence. And sometimes that's more than enough. A few weeks later, I filed for separation. Dana didn't fight it. We split things fairly. The house would go to her. I kept the savings I'd built before the marriage. It was civil. Cold but civil. And just like that, the life I'd built around everyone else's needs dissolved. But in its place, I started building something else. Smaller, simpler, mine. It's been just over 2 years since the wedding. Strange how a single day can split your life into a before and after. How a few words, a walk down an aisle, can fracture what you thought was unshakable. I live in a different city now. Smaller place closer to the lake. Quiet neighbors. A local diner that already knows my order. It's peaceful. And maybe that's what I was chasing all along. Not revenge, not closure. Just peace. The divorce finalized 6 months after I filed. No drawn-out court battle. No screaming matches. We signed the papers on a rainy Thursday morning in a room that smelled like old coffee and printer ink. Dana didn't look at me once. I handed her the keys to the house and she handed me the final agreement. 2 decades folded and signed. I drove away without music. Just the sound of tires on wet pavement and the faint feeling that I was shedding a version of myself I'd worn for too long. Sophie and I stayed in touch. Carefully at first. We didn't rush into anything. There were wounds to consider, hers, mine, Dana's. But over time it stopped feeling like a betrayal and started feeling like breathing. She reminded me of who I was before I got swallowed by everyone else's needs. The version of me who laughed without guilt, who didn't apologize for setting boundaries, who didn't need to be needed to feel valuable. We still don't use big words like forever. We don't need to. She's not my future. She's my present. And for now, that's more than enough. Tessa and I, well, we're complicated. After the separation, she messaged once every few months, updates about her new job, a picture of a dog she adopted, and "I hope you're okay" text on my birthday. I responded occasionally, not out of anger, but because I was learning the difference between missing someone and needing them back. One day she sent me a longer message. No asks, no apologies. Just, "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About everything. About how I made you feel like a placeholder. You weren't. You never were. I just didn't realize how much I owed you until you were gone." I stared at the message for a long time. And this time I replied, "I don't want you to owe me anything, Tessa. Just live with your eyes open." She wrote back, "I am now." That was the last message. Not because we're estranged. Because we both finally understood something. Some relationships don't end. They just change shape. Dana, on the other hand, never forgave me. I don't blame her. Forgiveness requires reflection, and some people aren't ready to look in the mirror and see the cracks. She told mutual friends that I abandoned the family, that I ran off with her friend. I didn't defend myself, not because it wasn't worth correcting, but because I was finally free of the need to be understood by people who had no interest in hearing me before. Every now and then, I still think about that wedding, not with rage, but with clarity. I picture myself sitting in that chair, watching a man who disappeared for most of her life get the moment I thought I'd earned. And I remember the tightness in my chest, the weight in my bones, the quiet voice in my head that whispered, "You're not part of this story." I didn't listen then. I do now. I've stopped trying to be a hero in other people's lives, not because I don't care, but because I finally care about myself just a little more. It's not selfishness. It's survival. It's saying I love you, but not enough to keep shrinking. It's saying I showed up for you. It's okay that you didn't show up for me, but now I know better. People ask if I miss them. I miss moments. A giggle from the living room. A midnight snack with shared laughter. The smell of pancakes on a Sunday morning. But the people, not really. Because the people in those memories aren't the same ones who looked at me and saw a spare part. And I'm no longer the man who kept offering himself up as one. Last weekend, I walked by a wedding in the park. A dad was walking his daughter down the aisle. Her eyes were locked on his. His hands trembled just a little. The whole thing felt sacred even from a distance, and I didn't feel bitter. I felt grateful, because once I got to be that kind of father, not for a day, not for a picture, but for years. And no one can take that from me. I sat on a bench far from the ceremony and wrote something down in my journal. You don't always get credit, but you still gave love. And that counts, even if no one claps. That's my ending. Not dramatic, not explosive, just honest. Because this isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about release, about letting go of roles you were cast in and writing your own lines. I wasn't replaced. I was released. And in that release, I found something better than forgiveness. I found peace. Story 3. I'm not someone who usually shares drama. I keep things bottled up, smile at family functions, and pretend I'm okay even when I'm being used like a personal ATM. But I'm done pretending. Because after everything I've done, everything I've given, my niece just called me selfish for not giving her more. And my family backed her up. So I need to know, was I really the bad guy? Or did they just get too used to having me on a leash? Let me give you some background. I'm Camille, 42, single, no kids. I run a small but successful catering and event space in Arizona. That means birthdays, showers, wedding receptions, you name it, I can organize it with my eyes closed. I started doing it for my family out of love. First a cousin's graduation, then my brother's vow renewal, then a few holiday dinners. It became tradition. I handled everything and they just showed up. At first I loved it. Seeing everyone laughing, eating the food I picked, dancing under lights I strung up, it filled me with joy. I thought I was helping build memories. Turns out, I was just footing the bill for people who stopped seeing me as family and started seeing me as free labor. The person who took the most advantage. My niece Belle, she's 27 now, the daughter of my older brother Charles. She used to be sweet when she was younger, but somewhere along the line, she learned that crocodile tears and guilt trips got her exactly what she wanted. Over the past few years, I've organized 3 major events for her. First, a dinner after her courthouse wedding, which she told no one about until 2 days after it happened. She texted me, "Can you throw something casual for family? I don't care what it looks like." I pulled off a gorgeous dinner in my venue, warm lighting, flowers, soft music. She showed up late, barely greeted anyone, scrolled through her phone the whole time, and left before dessert. Did she say thank you? Nope. Just sent me a photo the next day and said, "You got any more of those cupcakes?" Second event, her first baby shower. Same routine. She gave me zero input and just said, "Make it cute." I planned everything: invites, games, custom desserts, even little gift bags with handmade candles. She walked in wearing wrinkled sweatpants, took a few selfies, opened the presents with zero enthusiasm, and left halfway through. Everyone else stayed. She didn't. Her mom, my sister-in-law, tried to excuse it. She's just tired from the pregnancy. Okay, fine. Benefit of the doubt. Third time's the charm, right? Nope. Her second baby shower was even worse. She arrived 40 minutes late, didn't talk to anyone, and then pulled me aside and asked if I could pack up her gifts for her. I suggested she stay and open them in front of the guests. She laughed. "I don't have time for these small parties," she said. That was it for me. I made a quiet decision right then and there: never again. Not for her. Fast forward a year later. Her younger sister Jayla gets engaged. Total opposite of Brielle's sweet, grateful, helpful. I threw her a stunning bachelorette brunch. Jayla helped with everything from folding napkins to organizing RSVP cards. She sent me a handwritten thank you note afterward. A real one. With stamps. Everyone was happy. Except Belle. She arrived late again. Barely said a word to her sister, ate, and left before we cut the cake. While we were cleaning up, Charles turned to me and said, "Hey, by the way, Brielle's pregnant again. When can you start planning her baby shower?" I paused, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "I'm not." He blinked. "Wait, why not?" I said calmly, "Because she's never appreciated a single thing I've done. She doesn't say thank you. She's openly said she doesn't like my parties. I'm done." He chuckled like I was joking. "You're really going to be petty over that?" "It's not that deep." Petty. I spent over a decade giving her everything, and I'm petty. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. The next day, Belle called me, voice already sharp. "You told my dad you won't throw me a shower." "Yes," I said. "You told me you don't even like the parties. Why would you want another one?" She hesitated, then said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Because I need the gifts." That moment rewired my brain. It was never about celebrating new life. Never about the family being together. She just saw baby showers as a shopping spree she didn't have to pay for. I told her, "You can post a registry online, I'm not hosting anything." She exploded. "You're so selfish. You love being the center of attention with your little events. But when I actually need you, you won't help." Then she hung up. I sat in silence staring at the phone. Selfish. Later that night, Charles called again. "Brielle's crying. You embarrassed her. She said you're punishing her." I said, "If you want her to have a baby shower, you can pay me like any other client." Long silence. "How much would it be?" I gave him the real rate, the one I'd charge a stranger. His voice cracked. "That's insane." "No, that's fair. You just got used to me doing it for free." He hung up without another word. And I knew what was coming next. I didn't expect peace after the phone call with Charles. But I didn't expect war either. The very next morning, my phone started buzzing like a broken fire alarm. First, it was my mother. "Camille, I don't know what happened, but Brielle says you're refusing to throw her a shower. She's really upset. She told me herself she doesn't like the parties I plan." I replied. "She's just under a lot of stress," Mom said. "You know how pregnancy can make girls emotional." She literally said she only wanted the gifts. Mom paused, then said it. The sentence that always gets thrown around in my family like a hall pass for bad behavior. "She's family, Camille. Family helps each other." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. The next call came from my Aunt Valerie, then another from Cousin Joel, then 2 more texts from people I hadn't spoken to in months. "Why are you being so mean to Brielle? Come on, it's just a baby shower. You're being extra. She says you called her selfish and told her she didn't deserve a party." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "I never said that. I told her I wouldn't plan it. That's it. No insults, no drama." But Brielle had already rewritten the story. Now I was the cold-hearted aunt who refused to help a poor pregnant woman in her time of need. And people believed her. It got worse. One of my aunts who never called unless someone died left a voicemail in tears. "Sweetheart, how could you say Brielle's baby doesn't deserve to be celebrated? She told us everything. She said you think she's a leech." I sat there stunned. She made that up. Straight up lied. But no one asked me for my side. Because why would they? I was always the strong one, the put-together one. I never needed defending, so I never got it. By day 3, I was drowning in passive-aggressive messages and thinly veiled guilt trips. Brielle, meanwhile, was playing her role like she was auditioning for a soap opera. She went to my parents' house, teary-eyed, hand on her baby bump, whispering things like, "Camille hates me. She told me I'm just using everyone. I don't know what I did wrong." My mom, of course, folded instantly. "She's hormonal," she told me later. "You know how she is." "Yeah, I do. That's the problem." Then came the message that snapped the last thread of my patience. My cousin Nia texted me. "Hey, is it true you said the family is just using you and you're tired of freeloaders?" Freeloaders. I never said that word, ever. But apparently Brielle had. And now everyone was parroting it like it was fact. I stared at that text and felt something shift. If Brielle wanted to spin lies about me, fine. But she forgot one thing: I keep receipts. Literally. I had every message, every "can you help me out" text, every screenshot of her last-minute event demands. I even had bank records showing the thousands I'd spent covering costs she promised to pay me back for and never did. So I did what any quiet, composed woman with years of unspoken resentment would do. I started building a file, labeled it "The Truth About Brielle." That same day, I got a message from my cousin Dana. She's one of the few reasonable people in the family. She said, "I don't know what's really going on, but something feels off. Brielle told me you refused because you're bitter. But then she mentioned you offered to plan the party if she paid. So, which is it?" That stopped me in my tracks. She caught the inconsistency. If I truly hated Brielle, why would I offer to do the event for a fee? Because I didn't. I just stopped offering my services for free. That was the problem. They weren't angry because I refused. They were angry because I stopped doing it for nothing. 2 days later, my cousin Renee called, sounding nervous. I probably shouldn't say anything, but Brielle left her laptop at my place and didn't log out of her messages. She lowered her voice. She's been getting money from her in-laws, like a lot of it. And she told them her family cut her off, that no one supports her. But I saw a receipt for a shopping spree. High-end stuff, Camille. Designer shoes, a $400 bag. I went cold. So she was crying broke to us, then spending money on luxury brands. Renee added, she told her husband that no one in your side of the family ever helps her. That's why she needed to lean on his parents. Brielle wasn't just playing the victim to our family. She was running the same script on her husband. That night I couldn't sleep. So I did something petty. I admit it. I added up all the money I'd spent on Brielle's events over the last few years. Decorations, food, rentals, gas, last-minute purchases. The total, Just under $120,000. I sat on my couch staring at the number. 120 grand. For someone who said I was selfish. I felt sick. A week later, my younger cousin Sarah sent me screenshots of a group chat. In it, Brielle was saying I had always looked down on her, that I loved holding things over people's heads, that I was jealous of her family. Me, jealous of her. Another aunt chimed in saying, well, at least she never asked me for money. A third replied, wait, she asked me for money, said she couldn't afford diapers. Then a fourth you too. She said she needed rent money. I sent her $300 last month. The group went quiet. Brielle had been asking multiple relatives for cash using different stories each time, and no one knew until they started comparing notes. That's when I realized her whole house of cards was about to fall. All I had to do was give it a little push, and soon I'd get the perfect chance. I knew Brielle wouldn't stop. Even after the lies, the manipulation, and the fake victim routine, she was still out there painting me as the villain, the selfish aunt, the bitter woman who couldn't handle someone else being the center of attention. But I had something she didn't. Proof. And I planned to use it. The opportunity came faster than expected. My mother's 70th birthday was coming up, and as usual, she wanted the whole family together. She even asked me half-heartedly if I'd consider setting up a few things. I politely declined. She sounded disappointed but didn't push. A few days later, I got the group text. Dinner at Mom's this Sunday at 5. Everyone welcome. I stared at it for a moment, then smiled. Brielle would be there. So would Charles. And all the cousins and aunts she'd been whispering to behind my back. It would be the perfect place to clear the air. Not through yelling, not through insults, but through receipts. The night before the party, I stayed up organizing everything. Screenshots from texts, payment receipts, messages from cousins confirming what Brielle had told them. Even a timeline of her emergencies that didn't quite match her luxury purchases. I compiled it all into a neat little presentation on my iPad. If she wanted to make me the villain, fine. But villains always know how to make an entrance. That Sunday, I arrived right on time. Brielle was already there, of course, dressed in soft pink with one hand resting dramatically on her stomach like a Hallmark character. She smiled when she saw me, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Nervousness. She knew I wasn't going to stay quiet forever. I made small talk with a few relatives, kept things light, and waited. Then, just before dinner, my mother raised her glass for a toast. To family, she said, beaming. Through every high and low, we stick together. People clapped. I smiled, then stood up. I'd like to say something too. Everyone turned to look at me, some with curiosity, some with discomfort. Brielle tensed her fingers, tightening around her glass. I've kept quiet for a while now, I began, but I think it's time to address the story that's been making its way around this family. A ripple of murmurs passed through the room. I tapped the screen of my iPad and held it up. I've been accused of a lot over the past few weeks, of being selfish, of hating my niece, of thinking her child doesn't deserve to be celebrated. I took a breath. And those things are lies. I clicked to the first screenshot. Here's the message where Brielle told me directly I only want the gifts. Not the party, not the gathering, just the free stuff. I looked around the room. My Aunt Connie blinked. My cousin Joel's jaw tightened. Here's where she told her husband's family that our side abandoned her, that no one was helping her, while simultaneously asking multiple people here for money with different stories each time. I tapped through the next few messages, one by one. Here's the message to Aunt Vanessa asking for diaper money, the one to cousin Talia asking for rent, the PayPal receipt from Uncle Rob for $300 she said she needed for a hospital bill. And here I added is a receipt for a $450 designer purse purchased 2 days after she got that money. The room went dead silent, except for Brielle. She stood up, face red. This is a private attack. You're humiliating me in front of everyone. No, I said calmly. I'm correcting the record. You told people I was cruel, that I called you a leech, that I refused to help for no reason. I turned to my mother. You believed I turned on her out of spite. But the truth is, I stopped organizing her events when she made it clear she didn't care. She showed up late, left early, never said thank you, and still expected me to drop thousands every time. I looked around again, and when I finally said no, she spun a story to make me the villain. And it worked because I let her. Charles stood up slowly, looking like he'd just swallowed a brick. Is this true? He asked Brielle. She didn't respond. Her mouth opened once, then closed again. No tears, no excuses. Because this time the evidence spoke louder than she could. My cousin Dana murmured I gave her $250 last month. She told me the baby needed a special formula. Aunt Connie whispered, she said she didn't have a crib. I gave her money for that, someone else said. Suddenly the room turned. Not on me. On her. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said all I ever asked for was respect. Not money, not attention, just appreciation. And when I stopped being useful, I became disposable. I looked at Brielle, who was now staring at the floor. This wasn't about a baby shower, it was about control. Then I set the iPad down. And I'm done being controlled. I left before dessert. Didn't wait for more apologies. Didn't wait for my mother to speak. Let them sit in the truth for once. In the aftermath of what Brielle created and what I finally dismantled. As I walked out, I heard someone whisper, "We were so quick to believe the worst about her." And I smiled. The next morning I woke up to texts from people I hadn't heard from in weeks. Apologies, regret, I didn't know and I feel terrible and I should have asked for your side. It felt good, sure. But I didn't need it. Because I hadn't spoken my truth for them. I did it for me. The Monday after the party was quiet. No phone calls, no more guilt trips, no fake concern, just silence. It was beautiful. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up to chaos disguised as family love. I had expected another wave of messages, anger, denial, maybe even some backpedaling. But instead, the silence stretched, and it felt like peace. The only message I got that morning was from my cousin Dana. "I'm proud of you." That took guts. If I ever need help planning an event, I'm hiring you and paying in full. I smiled at my phone. Simple, real. And that was enough. Over the next few days, the dust started to settle. I didn't go around chasing apologies. I wasn't interested in clearing the air with people who only wanted to believe the version of me that was easiest to resent. A few relatives reached out to apologize. Some of them were sincere. Others just wanted to smooth things over so they wouldn't feel guilty when they needed me again. I let them say what they needed to say, then kept my distance. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You can forgive people and still not invite them back into your life. Brielle, on the other hand, went silent. No texts, no calls, no long Facebook rants this time. She disappeared from the family group chat, deleted a few posts. Someone told me she needed time to process everything. Good. Let her sit with the reality of her actions. Let her finally feel what it's like to not be shielded by lies. Her silence wasn't regret. It was exposure. Charles didn't speak to me for a while either. I expected that. He'd spent so long defending Brielle, I imagine he was embarrassed more than anything else. Then one night, a full week after the party, he sent me a voice message. "Camille, I don't know what to say. I didn't see it. I should have. You didn't deserve that. I'm sorry." I listened to it twice. Then replied, "Thank you. That means more than you know. I hope one day she gets it too. I don't know if she ever will." But I wasn't holding my breath. Mom eventually called too. Not with an apology exactly, but with something close enough. I believed her because I didn't want to believe she could lie like that. But I saw the proof. "And I'm sorry for doubting you." That was the most I'd ever get from her. And I accepted it. Because I wasn't interested in punishing anyone. Just in making sure they never confused my silence for weakness again. In the weeks that followed, I changed a lot of things. I pulled back from the people who only reached out when they needed favors. I said no more often, set clear terms, raised my prices, yes, even for family. It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. If you're going to take my time, my creativity, my care, you'll respect it. One afternoon, I sat on my patio with a glass of wine and started writing out every event I'd ever planned for the family. Just for myself. A wedding, 2 vow renewals, 4 baby showers, 3 graduation dinners, 6 birthday parties, at least 20 holidays. I added up the estimated costs. The number nearly made me choke. $121,000, not including last-minute expenses or personal touches I never billed for. All that money, all that time. For people who turned on me the second I stopped saying yes. It hit me then what I really lost wasn't money. It was years of giving parts of myself to people who only saw the surface. But here's the part I didn't expect. After walking away, I started rediscovering joy again. Not big dramatic moments, just little things. I had time to take on new clients who appreciated my work. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in years because I was always too busy helping family. I started planning events that mattered to me, community events, charity fundraisers, small businesses looking to launch something special. And every time someone paid full price and said thank you, I felt a little piece of myself return. A few months later, I was hosting a garden party for a local nonprofit when someone pulled me aside, a woman I'd never met before. She said, "You've got a glow about you, like you finally stopped carrying a weight you weren't meant to." I smiled. She was right. As for Brielle, she still hasn't apologized. And I've stopped waiting. I don't wish her harm. I don't want revenge. I just want distance. Because sometimes protecting your peace means letting people think you're the bad guy. Let them. As long as you know the truth, you're free. It took me years and thousands of dollars to learn this. Being the one who always shows up doesn't mean you owe them forever. You're allowed to stop giving when you're being taken for granted. You're allowed to say no without guilt. You're allowed to put yourself first without having to explain it. That's not selfish. That's self-respect. So here's what I leave you with. If you've ever been the one holding everyone together, organizing the dinners, sending the reminders, covering the bills, and still somehow ended up the villain, you're not alone. You're not bitter. You're just done. And that's okay. I didn't burn the bridge. They lit the match with their expectations. I just walked away before it turned me to ash.